everyone, today we're taking a look at the GepRC Cinebot35. This is the WTF version, which means I inserted my own 04 inside this. And as you can tell, mine has taken some damage, and we'll cover that along the way. As you can see down inside there, we have more than one flight controller. We have got the Taker H743 mini flight controller, as well as an ESC up there, which is the 860. It's a 32-bit 60 amp ESC that is running the AM32 firmware. The motors are GepRC Speedix 22105.5, and they are 2450 kV. This is a 6S edition. GPS in here is the Gep M10Q GPS. Props are the HQ a T90 MMX, and they are tri-bladed props, and you do get an extra set. Battery connector is an XT60. Mine is the Express LRS edition. There may be other editions, but check the product page to see which receivers you can get. Inside this area is where the USB port is supposed to be, and there's also a bind button next to it, but with my damage, those things have kind of gone inside the frame. Inside the prop protection is a Cobb LED light. And as you can see here, you do have access to your SD card as well as your USB port for your 04. To remove this cage and put it on other quads that GepRC may have, you got 2 screws here, and then on the bottom side, you got 2 screws right in here, and this whole cage lifts out. If you wanted to use an external camera, like a GoPro or whatnot, they do include a mount, which you would then insert kind of in this area on these screws and that screw. And it is a 3-position mount. It does come with an extra battery strap. It is the same size as the battery strap that is on the quad. Also comes with a little screwdriver. It also comes with various screws. You get some rubber dampening, some extra battery mats, wiring harness, a little bind pin, as well as a different cage to go over the top of the camera, and some other mounting for that front end accessories. This is what I believe you would use to mount an 03 inside this cage. It comes natively made for an 04, but I believe this helps you either mount an 03 or other alternate non-04 sorts of VTXs. But check the product page for more clarity on that, because of course I've only used the 04 in this. You get various sorts of information on the quad, as well as a little quick start guide for Betaflight, which does come in 2 languages. And it does also come with 1 sheet of stickers. I flew the quad on these 3 batteries in a slower sort of cinematic sort of style of flight. On the 1050, I got about 9 minutes on average. On the 850, I got about 7.5 minutes. And on the little 650, I got just over 5 minutes. That's the flat sort of flying. We'll show a full flight for the freestyles. The quad itself weighs 386.3 grams. My 1050 weighs 177.79 grams. The 850 weighs 141.9 grams. And the little 650 weighs 102.69 grams. Carbon fiber top plate looks to be about 4 millimeters thick, and the arm's about 13 millimeters wide. Motor post to motor post, it's longer than my calipers go, so I'd say about 170 millimeters. We're gonna do our FreeStyle Flight first, and I looked at the PID profiles just to show you. It has 2 different PID profiles. We have PID profile 1, which is for your standard cinematic sort of flat flying, and we have PID profile 2, which is juicy labeled there, and that is for our freestyle, and we are using PID profile 2. And I wanted to highlight that because one of the things that I find very, very frequently with this style of quad is they seem to be only PID tuned for flat sort of flight. And one of the things that I've noticed time and time again is when you do a vertical punch out and you come off the throttle for 0 throttle, that when you get the nose down, so you're looking down at the ground and maybe you're even still pulling away a little bit, that the quad will waggle or shake left to right. And that's something that we've looked at a few times on the channel. One of the resolutions or solutions to that could be to just re-PID profile it all together. Another one, which I had a video on about a year and a half ago, would be to increase the throttle linearization, which really helped a lot. And as you can see, I did that little vertical punch out there by the chimney, came back down, got the camera down, and then it didn't shake around. So that is great. And also in this freestyle flight, you'll notice several times where I come in relatively flat when I'm coming in from some sort of maneuver, whether it's a power loop around a little tree that's kind of broken over there in the corner. But when I come in flat, normally with most quads, when you come in that sort of flat, you'll see a little bit of prop wash, but they really, with this new juicy PID tune, they really did a nice job in making sure that, you know, it's PID profiled for not just flat flying, but for also more freestyle, not cinematic, excuse me, but something that you might, do tricks with and things of that nature. Now, obviously, I've got some pretty severe damage, and we'll cover that along the way, but I wanted to get through our flights before we get to the damage part of that. So if you're interested in the damage, I do have video footage of that, and it's fairly interesting to me. This isn't the cleanest flight I had, but it was one that I thought was pretty reasonable, and I thought, especially with some of the errors I made in flight, it kind of shows the effectiveness of their PID profile, their PID tune for this sort of flight style. Of course, flying flat, you're mainly concerned about getting good, calm video footage that doesn't have any shakes or wobbles in it. As is the case with all of these that have prop protection, they are sensitive to wind. The bigger they are, the less sensitive, but it's not, dramatic. If you compare like a 3-inch to a 3.5-inch, depending upon the weight, of course, you'll find that the sensitivity to the wind is a little bit less, but it's not dramatic. So, of course, if you're out there flying cinematic with these style of quads, you want to have the wind as low as possible. Of course, it's not in your control generally unless you're outside, or inside, and you have an environment and fans. You can see there as I bounce off the fence and the trees, and not a clean flight by any stretch, but I thought this flight in particular, I wasn't necessarily flying crisp. But it also has the advantage of making it more realistic in that I do fly these things aggressively, or at least as aggressively as my skills allow, and I make mistakes and I crash and I bang things, and in this case we had a little bit of an eventual failure, which resulted in a major crash and some damage that I did fly away from, but it's pretty severe. But when it comes to the FreeStyle side of things, I was pretty impressed with how it handled everything I can do with it, and I think that's a big issue when it comes to this style of quad. So I have to give GepRC props, because that's one of the things we don't see too often in companies when they make cinematic quads. They mainly PID tune them for just that flat cinematic sort of PID profile. Off the top of my head, RC is one of the few companies I've seen that their PID tune can handle both flat flying as well as FreeStyle flying. So that's stepping up. GepRC is stepping up their game when it comes to the PID profile. This flight is going to go a little long because I don't do a great job of managing my battery voltage, and these 6S batteries, while I don't fly them very frequently, they're not necessarily new or fresh, and they fall off pretty quickly at the end. You can see right here, my beeper inside the quad is going off. That's comes with the quad. It's not something I put in. But yeah, flew it too long, but I got about 4 minutes. I'd say 3:45, 3:50 would be your flight time.
Dang.
This is our cinematic sample. You can see in the top right, I've already got 14, 15 satellites. The GPS seems to be working normally as far as I can tell. And you have to have, I think it's 7 or 8 satellites for the GPS rescue to work before you arm. In most cases, I did not wait for that. It didn't take long, of course. It's just a matter of waiting about 1.5 minutes for the most part. I did have some flights. When you go one flight after another, it tends to get the GPS satellites right back real quick. Of course, many of you that use and have flown these sorts of quads before know that you can power them up with like a USB battery bank or something of that, and you can get the GPS powered off the flight controller using a USB power source, and then you can plug in your battery after, giving it a couple of minutes on that USB battery source, making sure you have all your GPS. But from flight to flight, if you don't wait a long time and you're kind of just outside flying, you will notice that the GPS comes back up really quickly. I would say, one flight to the next, within 30 seconds, you've got 8 to 10 GPS satellites already. Usually it takes me longer than 30 seconds to get flight ready with the flight audio and everything like that. So that seems to be working normally. Good flat footage. I should report that this is not a necessarily completely still day. 10-mile-an-hour winds with gusts up to 14 or 15 miles an hour, and the temperature was 69 degrees. And we went from, if you didn't notice, we went from the DVR view, which has all our Betaflight elements on screen, to the DJI Rocksteady, and then back to the DVR view that we see in the goggles. So that way you get to see the footage that is recorded on the 04 with Rocksteady, as well as what you see in the goggles. Something I always like to do, but if you're new to the channel or you just haven't noticed prior, I do transition back and forth out of that footage so that we can see both, as well as I think that's really important. That's a pretty good sample. This goes on for several more minutes. I don't know that it's too thrilling to watch, but I do want to get into the part where I start to cover my crash. This is ultimately where my crash is going to happen. There's more that kind of led up to this, but you'll see that my battery is already at 3.8 volts per cell, and the battery's fully charged. So that's indicating an electrical problem. And we do this punch, it's going to go sideways. Yep, I hit my neighbor's house, bounced off the roof. It sounded like some cement and then landed in the ground. We're going to turtle mode out of there. And remarkably, with all the damage that you see here, I'm able to still fly away. I got some vibes there at the beginning, but it straightens itself out somehow after I get up off the ground and I do fly it in. So we go back a few flights, actually fairly early on to when I first started flying this, and I'm doing my battery testing, and I'm just kind of flying around the yard. Nice steady flight, getting my flight times for the different sizes of batteries that I have available. Of course, the recommended size of battery for this is much larger than what I've got. I'm a micro guy. I don't have big batteries. I think they recommend like a 1300 or a 1500 6S battery. But as I come up here to the little brick structure, I wang off of there. I disarm because that's kind of my standard. And then I hit the pool, but as we take off, look at the voltage, and you saw a little water spatter up. So yeah, I got some water in there, I think. At least that's the indicator, because we have Betaflight elements that are reading really high for the battery voltage, the average voltage, and we had that water that we saw when I rearmed to take off. Would have been better off just keeping it armed. So we're going to come along the fence line here between us and our neighbors, and then the next fence pass, and it's going to do something kind of odd. This is about 2 days, 3 days later. I put my heat gun on it, at a distance, and it starts to do the weird thing. It almost swerved over there to the fence, and then as we get down here to the end of the yard, it's just going to tumble out of the air. I should have clarified. I did spray internally with some rubbing alcohol. I just kind of sprayed it in there because that will help take, some water elements and dry it out a little bit as well. And then I took my heat gun and kind of sprayed it in there a little bit as best I can through the holes and whatnot to dry things out and then let it sit. And I kept a small fan running as I could when I was around to kind of help dry it out. And it flew fine for, I don't know, 5 or 6 flight sessions. I went out and I did all my freestyle flying after that because I always do my battery testing first. And then all of a sudden it started acting weird where I would lose bind on every time I plugged in a battery, and then the voltage was showing weird. So I'd come back inside and I'd make sure that the batteries were fully charged. Have my little battery checker, put it on a charger just to double check. And then I could rebind the little button in here that was in there previously before the big crash. Press that to rebind, but that voltage was still off. And in the back of my mind, I was always like, oh, yeah. And then it stopped doing that one day. It was working normally. So I was doing my freestyle flying. And I did more freestyle flying the next day and maybe 2 or 3 days, whatever it was after that. And then all of a sudden, on one of the days where I had done several freestyle flights already, I plug another battery back in. I've lost bind again, and it's also reading a weird average battery voltage. And I'm like, what's going on? It's back to how it was before. Well, I'm guessing that unfortunately, when I clipped that little brick seating area and I hit the pool, or I landed on the pool cover after I disarmed, some water got up in there and did some damage. And then eventually that damage ended up biting me in the backside when it comes to being able to fly it more. So I did try it again this morning because it is the weekend, and I did not experience any more success. It still does the same thing where I lose bind. I can rebind, but the battery voltage is just off, and I'm not going to, it's not very flyable anymore. I mean, it takes, at the very least, what I would need to do is just replace the prop protection because the prop protection does, go up here all the way to the side, and I've got several broken pieces in here. Thankfully, the 04 that I put in there, my 04, that's fine. That continued to work normally. The interesting part about the electrical problem is the flight controller didn't reboot. It looks like a desync, but it wasn't consistent as far as, I had that desync, what looked like a desync when I showed you that clip passing along the fence where it just kind of tumbled out of the air. And then I had what looks like a desync when I did the big punch out over the house. But I had a lot of other flights where I did all that same stuff where obviously I showed you a full flight, didn't do that. So it's kind of a weird thing, but obviously I do have some damage on this. As far as, it took some damage, but really when it comes down to it, the carbon fiber held up. The props held up. The motors are still working. I think it's probably the ESC where I'm having an issue, which is a little bit curious because the ESC sits above the flight controller. And if I landed in water, I would have thought the flight controller would have gotten damaged. But, I could be wrong about my assessment. But just the way it's acting and what I'm seeing in the OSD, I think it's the ESC that, in my particular case, that has gotten damaged. But thankfully, the damage is just the plastic bits. There's some damage down here at the bottom, obviously, too. It's broken apart in a few different ways. And I did go over to my neighbor's house. If you don't know, I'm on good standing with all of my neighbors. I always text them before I head out to fly, usually an hour before I plan to fly, just to see if anybody's got plans, so they know. If they say, yeah, we were going to be out barbecuing or we have friends coming over or something, then I don't fly. But in this particular case, because I did crash on my neighbor's house, I went over. He was not there, but his wife was. The in-laws also live with them, and so Grandpa came out. I came over to my place, got a ladder, went up, did a little inspection on where I estimate it landed because of how it rolled off. Didn't really see any damage that I could account for. And then when he got home, I went over again. I asked his wife to text me when her husband got home, and we went out and back and looked again, and it doesn't look like I caused any damage. So everybody's, copacetic and not upset about this, which would be by far the biggest quad I'd ever crashed on anybody else's property, because 3.5 inch and it's 6S. So thankfully, and if you crash exactly like I do into a roof just like I did, you shouldn't damage your neighbor's roof if you do something like I did. In the moment, I don't have a link directly to this, so you can go to the GepRC website. I don't know about the price yet either. This is pre-release. This was sent by GepRC for review, so I will put a link just to GepRC's website if that's handy for you somehow. And eventually, when I do get a link to the product, I will include that down in the video description if you are interested in this. There could be other versions of this as well. I don't know, because I keep my communication with these manufacturers to a minimum. I don't know if there's a 4S version of this or if it's only 6S. And I don't know if, as I said earlier in the review, I don't know if it comes with other receiver types, whether it has Crossfire or other receiver types you might be able to get. I suspect you can. At the very least, you can get one where you can add your own receiver in if that's something that you choose to do. But overall, I was very happy with how it flew, especially on the FreeStyle side of things, because they did put that secondary PID profile. So when you do that punch out and then you go up and you get your camera down, it doesn't wobble around like pretty much all of these have up to this point, except for the RC Cinewhoops. Theirs are tuned very, very well and don't tend to do that wobble when you get up there on zero throttle. So that's a big bonus in my case, because I'm not someone out that is doing a lot of cinematic flying like some of you might be. But if you not only want to buy something like this and you want to fly it flat as well as more freestyle like, it got a second PED profile in there for you. If you do have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.